If if your father were listening and with the right intent on his part, the right spirit to receive a message from you, what would you want him to know about you and how that relationship formed who you are? Good or bad, indifferent?
Hmm. That's a great question.
No podcasting.
Right. What I want him to know, that you hurt me. It hurt my feelings that you weren't there,
Yeah.
physically. Not even talking about financial, mentally, emotionally, physically, because now that I look back on it, I feel like, and I'm not 100% blaming him, but I feel like I've held my guard up for so long.
Alrighty, welcome to the Dear Son podcast. This is typically a safe space where men have vulnerable conversations about the fatherhood journey. I have a wonderful guest on the show because that's all I do, and I think just the story is really going to connect. I want you guys to welcome Cleo Childress to the Dear Son podcast. How are you, my sister?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to dig in on this
Yeah,
topic.
yeah. Of course, we talk about fatherhood here, but we got connected through the podcasting space. I always want to make sure my guests have an opportunity to highlight their podcast as well. You have one that focuses on financial freedom. So tell the audience a little bit about that. We'll recap at the end as well, but let them know your podcast passion.
Yes, so my podcast is Financially Free with Cleo. So it's basically a show to help you live financially free in your own way. You know, we all have different interests, different lifestyles, and financial freedom means different things to different people. And there's just no one way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people can overcomplicate things. So I just teach people how to have those conversations because that's where it starts. We got to talk about this stuff, you know, not just the good money stories, but you got to talk about the stuff that doesn't feel as good.
Yeah.
And that's how we grow.
Absolutely. How'd you get into podcasting and why was that such an important topic for you to address and really dig into?
Well, it started from my own personal journey, which was not so great.
Okay.
You know, when I was a, young kid, I didn't really learn about money growing up, meaning I didn't have like friends or I didn't have, family members or teachers or anybody that was talking about money. So I didn't really get introduced to it until I was in college. That's when I got in a whole lot of debt, started with student loans. So just like over my journey going into like student loan debt and the payday loans and heavy credit card
down
debt.
My street. My wife here? She
heavy
probably...
credit card debt, getting cars repossessed. I've been evicted before. Oof. And just having my wage garnished. And it was just not a good feeling. Yeah. But it was a space that I didn't want to stay in because I had a daughter. I have a daughter.
Yeah.
And I just knew she's looking up to me. We can tell our kids to do this and that, but if we're not living it, how will they really follow? Ooh. So I was like, I got to really make a change. And just over the years, as I've progressed and made financial changes in my life and learned from my lessons from the past, I just started talking about it on social media and just, little posts here and there on Facebook or Instagram. But when people would, DM me or text me if they had my number, they were like, Cleo, I'm glad you wrote that. Because I started out writing blogs.
Okay.
And, people that were on my email list that I either knew or just knew from like growing up or people that didn't know me personally. And when I would get messages to say, oh, this really helped me, I'm going through this right now, or I've been through this, I wish I would have read this, years ago. Then I said, I guess somebody is out there
the people want
relating to it or it's helping someone. That's what my goal was. So once I started, posting about it and then talking about it more, I remember people mentioning you should have, a podcast, but I really wasn't understanding what podcasting is. I just knew I liked to talk about it. Yeah. And I just started going live like on Facebook and Instagram like a few years ago. This was back in maybe like 2017, 18. Okay. I just started going live a few times. And I was so nervous because I was like, I'm like, okay, is people going to be listening in? And when you first going live, you don't really have that many people watching. And I'm like, the people that are on there, they were tuned in, was asking me questions and giving me feedback on it. So I just knew that this is a topic that, of course, we all talk about money, but I felt like this should be something I'm doing more consistently, and not just to help other people, but to help myself, because it felt therapeutic to just get certain things out, because that was the first time I started talking about it publicly. Usually I have like a couple friends I tell stuff to, but being able to share with people, I've been evicted before and I was homeless.
Okay. All right. Let's back up in the story, and we'll get to all of the sharing and the transparency. Like I said, we met through the podcast space. The specific the moment that I DM'd you about coming on the show is when you started you did that post about with the words were telling your story. Teen mom, this happened, that happened. I was like, whoa, let's see what her story is. So let's back up to your childhood memories, your family dynamic. You're from Tennessee, correct?
Yes.
Nashville? Can we still say Cashville? Or is that no? Did y'all ever say that, or was it just people outside of Nashville?
We said it too. Okay, yeah, people said Cashville or Nash Vegas, all that stuff.
Really? Okay.
So people still say Cashville. There's so many different names out there. So.
Okay. Let's talk about Cashville. And like, what specific area did you grow up in, and kind of paint the picture of like what your environment was like?
Yeah. So yes, I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised, and I grew up in Edge Hill. That's where my mom's side of the family is from. Okay. Edge Hill, which is some projects in Nashville, in the inner city, and that's where I really got my start. Learning about lower income neighborhoods, because that's where I was living. Yeah. But back then, even though my mom didn't have a lot of money, it was a single parent home. Like, my mom and dad were married, but they broke up, got divorced when I was really, really young. Okay. Maybe 3 or 5. I can't really remember. But I'm used to a single mom, single parent home with me and my older sister. She's 2 years older than me. Okay. So that's where I grew up. And I just remember not having a lot of money now thinking about it, but back then I didn't understand. My mom made it feel like we weren't struggling and poor, didn't have a lot of money, because she always made sure we had food, clothes, even extra things that we wanted. She figured out a way to get most of the stuff. Like, I can remember living in Edge Hill in the projects, being in the window, eating, regular like elbow pasta macaroni, but it was just butter on it, like buttered pasta. And at that time, this was good to me, you know. I didn't think it was like, I guess a struggle meal, people would call it. But it's just things like that would happen. It's like, now I look back on it, I was like, I see how my mama struggled to make ends meet. Yeah. But back then, I didn't always understand that it was struggling.
Got it. So projects, we understand what projects are to a degree. Kind of describe what your immediate environment was like when you stepped outside of your house. What were the challenges or the influences that you had to battle with?
Yeah, so living in that type of environment, it's always something going on. Yeah. Somebody over there fighting, somebody arguing all the time, day and night, people getting shot, getting killed. It's people, getting their cars stolen or stripped. So it's like a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. I remember, and my mom till this day still like to share this story. So like, there was one day, me and my sister and my mom was just coming out the house. Don't even remember where we were going, but this was late at night, and all I remember was the police was telling us to stop and get your hands up. And I'm probably maybe 6 or 7. Wow. I wasn't understanding about, when the police tell you to do something, do it. I don't do anything. My mom doesn't do anything. Even though we lived in that environment, I was never in any trouble. So my first thought was, well, why do I have to put my hands up? Gotcha. We didn't do anything. We're just going to go maybe to the store or something. But they had guns drawn on us. And my mom kept telling me to shut up. Yeah. Shut up, Cleo. Yeah. And I was like, well, we didn't do anything. I kept trying to explain to them, but we didn't do anything. What's going on? It was like, it's not us. We didn't do anything. That's all I kept saying. And I just have this mental picture of the guns drawn on us. And just thinking about stuff that happens today, and I look back on that moment, I think, what if I kept talking? Well, I did keep talking. I had a problem with talking back then. Okay. I wouldn't shut up because I kept saying, well, we didn't do anything. And my mom kept saying, shut up, Cleo. Yeah. Stop talking. And they eventually, stopped that and moved on somewhere else. But it's just things like that I didn't think traumatized me, Yeah. And I look back on it and I'm like, it's just things like that I didn't think bothered me then. Right. That still, bothered me like later on in my childhood. in adulthood. So there were fun times, but then there were times like that where it's like it mentally messes with you.
Yeah. Did you ever find out what that situation stemmed from, or I mean, that memory is enough. That what's burned into your spirit right there is enough. But was there ever any like this is why it happened?
I didn't find out because it just happened so often. It was always the police up and down everywhere to the point where I wish I would have followed up and figured out what happened.
Yeah.
But you saw the police all the time. Somebody getting pulled over, somebody getting the guns drawn on them. And it's like, it happens so often. I just was like, oh, it's like another day.
Yeah.
So it's not like at that time I wanted to find out. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I really wonder who they was looking for.
Right.
And why they thought a mom with 2 little girls was the ones that did it. Like, I was just confused. Now I'm trying to like piece things together. But back then I was just like, well, we didn't do anything.
Right.
You know, I didn't know to be quiet.
Right. So you mentioned that your parents were married at one point and they separated. What memories do you have of them being together, or was your dad around after they separated?
No. Okay. So like I have lots of pictures, like not necessarily with him, but just when I was younger. So it's like I know we were living in a household together, but I don't have as much mental pictures as my older sister does. So I can just only go on like certain stories that people tell me. I have a few mental pictures, but I know I was really young, maybe 3 to 5, that we were actually in a household together. Wow. But then after that, after they broke up and, you know, got divorced, he wasn't there. Okay. And I don't think I really started to wonder why until probably when I was like in middle school. Yeah. Because, you know, as a young girl, you have like, I was always in sports and dance and things like that. So it does feel a little way when you see other friends and their fathers are bringing flowers to the dance recital, or they're showing up to the games, or they're talking to their father often. And it's like, as you get older as a young girl, you do start to wonder like, well, where's my father at? Right. Yeah, I know we're not in the same household, but I have other friends who their father's not in the household, but their father is still showing up. Where is mine? So no, he wasn't there afterwards. Like I still, of course, knew who he was, and he's, you know, from Nashville too, but I know he had later moved to Georgia. But I feel like I really struggled with it when I got, you know, older, like as a teenager.
Yeah. How did that relationship, or the lack thereof, affect how you saw and interacted with boys, older boys, young men throughout your life? Are you conscious of how it kind of shaped those interactions, or?
I used to be in denial about it, but now I'm aware of how it affects it. So like when I was 17 and I did find out I was pregnant, I told my father. I remember being at home, you know, talking to him over the phone, because at that time he was in Georgia. And all I thought was, I was just looking for some support, you know? The good thing is that my mom was supportive. People at school, even though I was terrified for everybody to find out, people were actually really supportive. No one really like, you know, attacked me, criticized me until I told my father. Remind you, this is to someone who, yes, he's my father, but you're not in the picture. You're not around. So when I told him, the first thing that he did was attack me, like verbally, like meaning, why are you having sex with no condoms? Why are you even having sex? You know, why are you getting pregnant at a young age? And it's like, why are you this? Why are you that? And I'm just like, I started crying. I just started crying because I was just like, I called to tell you, most parents wouldn't want their teen to be a parent at a young age, but it's like, I don't need to hear this right now. Right. You can give me a lecture maybe later, but right now I wasn't trying to get that from you. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have expected anything different. I don't know.
So that's what I want to interject, because I want to understand why you had an expectation of that call. So were you having regular conversations with your father, even though he was in Georgia? Were there previous things where you needed his advice, or you needed that fatherly shoulder to lean on, where you went to him and it was there? Like what was from when he moved to Georgia to this period, what was that interaction like that maybe gave you some hope that maybe he wants to understand what I'm going through and he'll be there to help me through this process?
Yeah, so no conversations, no communication, no support. So there was no relationship there. So like I know my older sister, and I have other siblings on my father's side, a lot of them. Um most of them are more closer to him, and I know they would tell me and say, "Hey Cleo, you should, you know, make an effort to try to build a relationship with them." And he probably doesn't, reach out because he probably don't think you want to talk to him. So I was like, when that happened, I was like, well, maybe this could be the time I try to make a effort to, for one, share something new that's going on,
right.
but maybe to also build the relationship, because now he's gonna have another grandchild coming.
Right.
So that was the reason for me wanting to tell him.
Gotcha.
Those reasons, and plus maybe some extra support.
Sure.
So I kind of feel like, well, Cleo, what did you really expect?
Right.
But at the same time, I was just still crushed because I felt like, well, maybe he'll, not be the father that I feel like I, desired, but at least support in some type of way.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about money or anything like that. I'm just talking about like, just checking in, just saying, maybe giving me some encouraging words.
Right.
That could have been enough at the moment. But it definitely wasn't where we had a close relationship. But after, my mom saw I was crying, she just snatched the phone, cussed him out, and that was the end of that. And I didn't talk to him. This is like December of my senior year of high school.
Okay.
So I'm still in school. I didn't quit or anything like that. So my graduation comes for high school. He reaches out to me and was like, just wanted to see how you were doing. Send me an invitation to the graduation. I want to come, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's making an effort to try to be in my life more, right, and, eventually be there for the new grandchild. Send him an invitation. He didn't come. So I was just like, I wasn't really sad. It bothered me a little bit, but it was like, I wasn't really 100% depending on you to be there.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened. And I didn't talk to him, since then. But then it came to when I graduated from college, because I went straight from high school to college. So around the time when I was going to graduate college, he reached out to me, asked me for pictures of my daughter, said, send me a, invitation to your graduation. I want to come and support. He didn't come. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm definitely not going to reach out.
Yeah.
And if you reach out to me, I'm probably not going to respond or answer. Right. And I know some people's like, Cleo, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't hold a grudge. But I didn't feel like I was holding a grudge. I was just kind of exhausted to try to. I want you to come and to me, like reach out to me and say, hey, I want to come. Like, I just rather you not just say anything. Like, if you don't want to come, it's cool. It's okay. I will get over it if I'm hurt about it. But it's just the point of him reaching out, saying he's going to come and not showing up. I was just done after that.
So your expanded family, the other children that he had, were you still in contact with them after you had the child and up to that point of graduation?
With the other kids?
Yeah.
So I think I'm probably like somewhere in the middle. So it's about like 16 of us on my father's side.
Oh.
Yes, it's like 16 and counting. I think the youngest.
He was asking her why sex was happening. Right. Okay. Carry on.
Exactly. My mom said the exact same thing. Like, how are you going to do that? And you were like 15 having kids.
Oof.
So, so I'm like in the middle range. So I think the youngest is like 2 or 3, and the oldest are like maybe late 40s, wow, I believe.
The reason I was asking is I wanted to understand if they had any information about why he gets these urges to contact you. Like, if people putting pressure on him, was he in another marriage and he's feeling some kind of way? I was just wondering if you had any insight on that.
I think now, I don't know if this is what it is because I don't have conversations with him to see how he's feeling or whatever, but I've had certain family members say that he may be proud of me of how I turned out. Yes, I was a single mom, and yes, I had some struggles, but I guess maybe compared to, and I'm not saying I'm better than anyone.
Yeah.
He's just, some people have said that he probably looks up to you in a way, or maybe he's proud of you. And because like when I post certain things, he'll share them. Like, we're friends on Facebook. So my mom will say, oh, now you want to share stuff, And it's like, even back then, yes, I was, a teen mom, but I still finished high school, still went straight to college, and I still, worked and continued to provide for my daughter. Even though I was struggling, I still wasn't just out here looking crazy, being a trifling mother. Like, I was making things happen the best way I could every year of my life. And I think he would see certain posts and see me doing well. And maybe he feels like, I don't know, that he's kind of missing out. That's what other family members would mention to me. It's like, okay, maybe he see you doing well and feels like, oh, it wasn't because of him,
Embarrassed. That's what I was going to say. I don't know if it's, I'm getting the story with you guys at the same time. So I don't have any further insight on that, but I can imagine as a man, if you shirk your responsibilities and you see that the situation still turned out well or better than it would have you been involved, it can be a little bit embarrassing. It makes you look at yourself and wonder, take kind of an inventory. And if he has so many other kids, it probably, he's probably dealing with a lot of, some of the decisions that he's made and how it's impacting so many people.
Oh yeah, because I remember the first time I relocated. So of course, born and raised in Nashville, lived all my life. But the first time I relocated was back in 2013, and I moved to Miami, Florida. And of course, I posted about it, just saying, "Hey, I'm moving, I'm relocating, I'm moving to Miami," and I got a job there, and I moved. And like, after a week of me being there, he called me. And at that point, I hadn't talked to him in some years, and I was just like, I didn't even have the number saved, Right. So I was just like,
new phone, who this?
Yeah. So he was asking me how I was doing, but in my mind, I just didn't feel like it was genuine. Yeah. So I couldn't, and I'm not trying to fake. So and not that I was being rude, I just was like, who sent you? What you want? That's what I had in my mind. But I felt like it wasn't genuine because it's not like it was a random day and you called to check on me. Yeah. You saw I posted that I moved to Miami. And when people say they moved to Miami, you think, oh, they must be doing well. They moved to Miami. So I kind of felt like maybe you're just being nosy. I don't know. So I kind of got tired of I just kind of had a flashback of, you reached out when I graduated college. Yeah. You reached out when I graduated high school. You didn't show up. I wasn't even looking for anything. I just wanted, I wasn't trying to look for a gift or money. I just wanted you to show up. Like, you reached out to me and said you wanted to show up. So when he reached out to me when I relocated, he was just saying, how you doing? I saw you moved, and just a little small talk. Yeah. But after I got off the phone, I was just like, I just didn't feel anything really. Okay. And then even a couple of years after that, he had messaged me on Facebook and Messenger, and he was like, hey, it's around my birthday. He was like, hey, my birthday's in April. So he was like, hey, I know your birthday's coming up. I'm going to get you a gift this time, LOL. In my mind, I'm thinking, I don't see what's funny, yeah. But I don't need a gift. Yeah. And it's like, I'm an adult, a gift is not what I need. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Yes, some of my other brothers and sisters can just be okay with just getting gifts or some money, but I'm like, that doesn't make me excited. You saying you're going to give me a gift. Yeah. You didn't give me a gift when I was a kid. Right. So I just kind of felt, and I definitely know that affected the way I handle relationships, whether if it's romantic or with friendships. I have the guard up. Yeah. I had it up for a long, long time. And it's not as thick and as high as it used to be, but it's still there. Yeah. Because of that. And when I said I used to be in denial, it's because I didn't think how he treated me affected me until I went to see a therapist, and she's like, well, it is. Some unpacking. Yeah.
And just for the disclaimer, this is not therapy. If anybody got that confused, this is in no way, shape, or form therapy. But let's dig into how it impacted your ability to relate, communicate, trust men or young men. You mentioned that you were pregnant at 17. Can you talk about that relationship, or was there a relationship with your child's father?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, so he was, I guess you can say it was high school sweetheart type thing. Okay. So it was someone that I had talked to off and on through high school. And of course, my senior of high school, that's when I get pregnant. So everything was cool. The type of person he was, he was respectable. He had like a part-time job working at Kroger's. Like he was someone I thought was going to be like a respectable man one day,
Right.
And then I remember after I had my daughter, like things, he after high school, he joined the Marines, went to the military, went to Iraq for 2 years and came back and was a totally different person.
Yeah.
And I had family members that were in the military, and all of them came back and had lots of problems, having to take, medication or staying in certain VA medical facilities and things like that. So I know when you come back, you do need to get some type of counseling and therapy to get used to civilian life. And he tried, but he stopped going.
Okay.
And that's when all the problems started. So I just knew I couldn't stay there. And when I say problems, I'm meaning the constant arguing. So for me, once he came back, he had a lot of money in his account and all he wanted to do was just go party and that's it.
Right.
And then it came to an issue where he wasn't financially doing his part. It would be simple things like paying for daycare. Back then, it wasn't as expensive as it is now, because I had a lower income, so I was able to get some assistance, like government assistance to pay for daycare, paying for food, but I still had to have a lot of out of pocket expenses, and that seemed to not be a priority. And I just knew, like, I can't have a romantic relationship and this child, I'm not getting help with the child. It just didn't make sense to me. Some people deal with that. That's like a deal breaker. Like, how am I in a relationship and I feel like a single parent? Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is not going to work. But then it turned into like constant arguing, stalking, physically, altercations, and like one time I was at home and him and one of his friends came over, tried to get in my place. I didn't open the door, but he took my hubcaps off my car and set them on top of my roof of the hood of my car. And I'm just like,
Pettyville.
Little things like that. But with him being in the military, he had weapons. So there would be times I would go out and I would come home and he would be sitting outside of my place with like a shotgun sticking outside of the door. And my friend was
you trying to enter your.
Well, I would pull up to park to go in. But when I would see him already waiting outside, and when he would see me pull up, he had that gun stuck out. And it's like, and of course, this is late at night. Nobody's really outside at the moment. So I guess he assumes nobody's probably really seeing this. But I would usually be riding with friends. And they're like, nope, you're staying in my place. You're not staying here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I look back on, I'm like, they could have turned into some really bad situations, But thank God it didn't. But it was just things like that was mentally draining. And, when you're young, you think, this is what I was always told. Oh, he's just still dealing with the military stuff. And, he didn't have his father around. And that's what his mom would say. Oh, he didn't have his father. I get it. But there's lots of people who didn't have their father. Yeah. But they're not disrespecting women or not taking care of their responsibilities. And I know people can change, but everyone has a limit. So I had reached my limit. And it was just constant situations. Like, for example, there was a time when my daughter had dance practice. They had take dance pictures. His mom called me and said, hey, can you bring her over? I was like, well, sure. After dance class. So I pulled up at their house, and at this time he was living with his mom. So it's a house where his mother and him was living in the house. I pull up, I see his mom's car was gone, but I saw the door open. So I was like, well, maybe she's gone, but he's there. So I was like, let me just go in there and drop her off. So I go inside, and I was changing my daughter's costume to put on some regular clothes. He comes out the shower and just goes off. What are you doing in here? Like cursing. Later, I realized he was definitely on something. But I'm thinking, y'all called me to bring my daughter here, and it turned into my daughter starts screaming and crying. He pushes me. Clearly, he's stronger than me. So he pushes me out of the house, throws my phone. It's raining outside. Now I hear my daughter in there screaming, crying, and now I'm stuck outside. So I end up having to call the police. Wow. His mom ended up coming back. She got upset that I called the police. She said, you should have just waited. Y'all always argue and things are fine. And I'm just like, this is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's generational clearly for him. What did you see early in life? Did you see did your mom or anybody in your family deal with these kind of situations? And how did they manage it? You did mention that, it's kind of, this is what he's going through. He'll get better. It'll get better. But were you up close and personal with those situations where?
With my father, I was too young to. I heard about certain stories,
Mm,
but with my mom and dad, I didn't really see the altercations. I know they had them,
yeah.
but I just only heard about it from other family members. So I didn't get to see that, but I know it wasn't a great relationship.
Yeah.
Even going back to when I was younger, like it's just be certain things I would find out. Like, for example, I have someone who I grew up knowing it was my cousin. But then as I got older, I learned that he was my brother.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, you're my cousin because my mom and your mom are sisters. And then when I realized he's my brother because we have the same father, I was like confused. Like,
wait a minute.
I was like, because no one really just told me, but I started to like piece it together. And I went to my mom. I was like,
wait. So now I'm confused.
yeah.
Ignorant question. Were both things true? Or were you just being told he was your cousin, but he was actually your brother? Was he actually brother cousin for real?
Yes. And I was like, I always grew up knowing that he was my cousin because we used to stay at my grandmama's house and I knew my mom and his mom were sisters. But then when I realized we had the same father, I was like, wait a minute.
Wow.
I was like, is he my brother first
Yeah.
or is he my cousin first? But then I also was like, well, what was y'all doing back then? Like,
Yeah.
what was going on? And I know that's not a child's place to ask those questions.
Right.
I didn't ask those, but in my mind, I was thinking, what was going on? But
Yeah.
as I got an adult, then I would like talk to my mom about it. And I was just like, that just kind of made me feel a certain way towards him. But then also with my mom and my aunt, I'm just like, I mean, they're grown, do whatever.
Right.
I'm not judging. But at the time, I was just like, my father was criticizing me. And he has like this long laundry list of stuff that he had going on. So it kind of made me feel like, should I even try to work this relationship out? Because it seems like he has a whole lot going on, but wants me to be perfect.
Was there were there any male figures in your life where you had an expectation of them and they lived up to the expectation?
I can't really count any. No. Um, it hurt me for a long time that I didn't have it because I'm like, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I've been single more than I've been in a relationship because I feel like if I avoid it, I won't be hurt.
Right.
But then like, and not just with romantic relationships, but even with friendships too, I still get a little guarded with that too, not getting too close to men.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that's healthy because you could miss out on great friendships or relationships because you're guarded from things from the past. So I had to realize I've probably missed, not probably, I know I missed out on some good potential relationships because my guard was up. And if someone's trying to get close to you, well, for example, on the romantic side, they're not going to keep trying forever, So yeah, I know I know that definitely plays a role in my relationships from the past and even present day. I've gotten a lot better, but I feel like part of me is probably still traumatized by being let down, whether if it's an uncle or my father or my daughter's father. It does make me feel a little sad that I don't have good examples because now that my daughter's 18, I struggle with, I don't want her to experience what I experienced.
Yeah.
And I know I can't, protect her from everything. And I don't want to. I want her to learn because sometimes you don't get things until you go through it yourself.
Yeah.
But I just pray and always hope that she can at least have some positive male role models in her life. Now I have friends I went to school with that has been really cool where they would, give my daughter some advice, because I can tell her stuff, but it's different coming from a man. So thankfully I've had, some friends that are males that have said, she can ask me questions, talk to me, and that's been great. But for me, it does feel, I don't know if empty is the right word, but even today, I still feel like I wish I had like some for real positive male role models
Yeah.
that I know genuinely, care about me.
So you use the word traumatized,
Yeah.
which it's not for me to agree or disagree, but I agree that that's the right word. But as you were talking, what popped in my head that I have to be more mindful of is, I wonder if she was bitter, right? And I'm not asking if you were, but do you ever feel or find that that's projected on you because of your lack of because of that guard, right? And it's not the lack of intimacy, and not in the physical or sexual sense, but just being able to get close to a person. Have you been kind of typecast as bitter at
As
any
bitter.
point?
Whew. I think bitter may be there's been times where I've asked myself, am I bitter? Or am I holding a grudge against people?
Yeah.
Because, now that I'm more vocal to talk about stuff now, but at one point I would just stop communication with people and I just wouldn't talk about anything.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people wouldn't even know I felt a certain way. And I know sometimes people say, well, sometimes people do things and they don't even know it bothers you. So I was like, Cleo, you can't assume they know how you're feeling, things like that. But I just sometimes I do feel like I've been bitter in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Present day, I don't feel like I'm bitter, but in the past, when I look back on it, like thinking about my feelings and emotions at the time, I probably had some bitterness there.
Yeah.
And I know that's not healthy either.
Did any of that do you see signs of any of that in your daughter? I'm sure you're a fantastic mother. I am no doubt in my mind in that, in some of that emptiness or that longing that you may still have. How have you managed conversations with her to ensure that she doesn't own your experience? She needs to understand it, but she doesn't own it, internalize it, and miss out on those opportunities like you were talking about.
Yeah, so I know with her father, I've had lots of conversations with her. Like I know when she was younger, I really wouldn't say too much but with little kids, they don't really understand certain things.
Yeah.
But now that she's 18 now, she's gotten older, I had to explain certain because I know she would wonder, well, why it's kind of like the same cycle with me. My daughter's always in some activities and she has friends whose fathers show up. And she'll wonder, well, even though you all aren't together, she wonders why he's not showing up.
Yeah.
And of course, he'll, it's like it hurts a little bit because it's like the same cycle. It's like this person in high school, yes, he was a child, but you couldn't have paid me to believe he would turn out to be what he is now, not being a father like that. Right. But with her, I try to explain to her how we did try to co-parent. Okay. It's not like he did one thing and I'm like, I'm done. No, I tried multiple times, but mentally it gets draining. Yeah. So I had to get to a point where I don't even communicate with him or his mother. She has a phone. She's had a phone since maybe 13. Right. So I always tell them, I never keep, her away from them. I always say, y'all can call her anytime. If you ever want to see her, you can see her anytime. Even though we're not in Nashville, I said, she can always come there. Y'all can always come here. I just need to know the arrangements. Right. And of course, they would always wait till we travel back to Nashville. They would never bought her a plane ticket to come back. But she would always wonder, well, is it me? Is it something wrong with me? And I had to explain to her how I just didn't want her to feel that way. Because I said, I've been there. My daughter's name is Destiny. I said, I've been there. I know how you feel. Like I know how she feels, but she would never let him know. Yeah. Because she don't want to start any drama or have any confrontations. I know she's going to get there because she's starting to be more open, but she's not like 100% where she can express her feelings to him, especially if she's not feeling good about something. But I just feel like as a mom, I just want to make sure I let her know that you can come talk to me about anything. Right. But if you don't feel comfortable coming to me, because sometimes you may not want to always go to a parent. You may want to talk to somebody else. Right. So I've given her resources to talk to counselors and therapists and make sure she's selective with friends. Because, sometimes talking to a friend is great, and sometimes it may not be great. Yeah. So I guess for me, I just try to make sure I have those conversations with her, like checking in with her, like asking her how she's doing, and not her just saying, oh, everything's good. Like, no, if it's something not really good, just tell me. And I know she gets terrified to, how how can I say this? Sometimes she feels like I'm too hard on her. And I actually had one of my close friends says, I need to chill out. Because one of my friends said, she was like, Cleo, she didn't have to grow up fast like we did. Because of me and another friend, we had kids as a teen. We had to grow up really fast.
Right.
And she was like, Cleo, she's a good girl, but she's like, she didn't have to learn fast and grow up quick like we did. So she's like, she's still doing good, but sometimes she's like, you may be a little too hard on her. Yeah. Sometimes I don't feel like I am, but sometimes I'll be like, ooh, maybe I was demanding too much. But I guess that's the fear of me not wanting her like get pregnant early or not miss out on opportunities. Because even though I went to college, I didn't get to experience college like I wanted to. Right. Because I tried to be in activities. It just didn't work. It was just too much. And I knew I had to let go of the activities, and just focus on work. Strictly go to campus for class and I leave. But my daughter, she doesn't have to work and go to school. She doesn't want to. She doesn't have a child that she's taking care of. So I guess for me, I'm just like, I want her to have freedom that I didn't have at her age. But she looks at me and was like, yeah, you had a child early, but you're doing well in her eyes. I'm great, and I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't easy.
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, if you're successful, the model is if you can do it, I can do it too, with all of your challenges, but you don't want your child to go through those challenges. You instantly went to situations as recently as last week with our 18-year-old. It's a very weird place to be. And in the conversation with my wife, that my challenge is I don't have the woman's experience. I can't understand what she's going through. With the boys, their experiences aren't the same as mine, but I get manhood. I get what it is to be a boy. I get that through and through. You mentioned that you didn't always talk about things, or specifically this topic. What changed? What unlocked that willingness, or gave you the freedom to tell your story, or discuss things, or own your history?
Not just like with like men, but just anything.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like when I first started to like change my life, I started hearing other people's stories. When I was living in Nashville, I was in this program that helped you become, financially independent, like not having to depend on government assistance.
Gotcha.
And I would hear other people in the program share their stories about all kind of stuff, whether they were on drugs or whether they were homeless or whether they were from another state and just had different type of family issues. And I have issues, but I was like, wow, I'm not the only one that have some issues and struggling with things. So it felt good to know other people had struggles and overcame them. And I kind of felt like I underestimated my stories for a long time because I'm like, well, I don't really have nothing special, I don't really have anything unique. So I really wouldn't tell it because I was like, I don't think it's a big deal. But once I would start talking to people, just with like random sidebar conversations, people would be like, wow, you should tell that story to more people. And I'm like, I should, And it was like, yes, there's people that need to hear it, whether if it's someone else, like a young girl that is experiencing teen pregnancy, or maybe you have, kids that was never introduced to money at all, and they need to hear someone who was in their place and need to hear you speak. So I just want to start telling everybody and sharing it and not being embarrassed anymore, because I was embarrassed and ashamed, and I just felt like this terrible mom because I feel like I should have had it together or I should have known better. But once I started hearing other people's stories and they were in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s, I'm like, why am I being so hard on myself? Everybody has a journey, and I just didn't want to hide it anymore.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get it out. And the first time I spoke, I went back to the program that I was in several years ago. I basically just reached out to them and said, hey, I want to come back to Nashville and just share a piece of my story to some people that are currently in the program. They let me come back, and I started sharing. And the crazy part is I started crying.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people say, if you're crying, you're not really healed from it. But it's not like I was still sad. I just was happy to talk about it. Yeah. And I cried because I was like, I remember how I felt. So it was like joyful tears for me at the moment. But it was so funny because they invited me back to speak, and they already had tissues waiting for me, like box of tissues, just in case I started crying. But that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I felt like I need to get it out for myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt like someone else could hear it and it could help someone else. Because
Yeah.
I know that's what struck a nerve for me when I would hear other people talk about their experiences.
Yeah. If your father were listening and with the right intent on his part, the right spirit to receive a message from you, what would you want him to know about you and how that relationship formed who you are? Good or bad, indifferent?
That's a great question.
No podcasting.
Right. What I want him to know, that you hurt me. It hurt my feelings that you weren't there.
Yeah.
Physically, not even talking about financial, mentally, emotionally, physically, because now that I look back on it, I feel like, and I'm not 100% blaming him, but I feel like I've held my guard up for so long and I've been in denial about it. I was like, no, my father is not interfering with nothing that's going on in my life.
Right.
But once I started like learning more about myself and, shifting my mindset about a lot of things, I was like, you know what, Cleo, you got to admit that it did hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
So I want him to know that he hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, part of me is still hurt.
Right.
And part of me is still struggling with being so hard on my own daughter because I want her to avoid men like my father.
Wow.
But at the same time, I struggle with, well, am I being too hard? Will I cause a problem with my daughter and how she sees men? I don't tell her that all men are bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just tell her my truth, and I try to tell her how she can, build relationships with men who are genuine. So, but as far as my father, I just want him to know that he hurt my feelings, and I wish that you would have kept your word. And even though you didn't, I wish you would have acknowledged that you didn't, and just say, I apologize.
Right.
Only if you meant it, That's all I feel like I would look for, is the acknowledgement that you were wrong in my eyes.
How much of that story fuels your success, right? Because some of it frustrates, some of it fuels.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said, because you're honest with your feelings, but sometimes people mask it so much and they're so anxious to be successful to prove somebody else wrong, they're not even enjoying the journey of success.
Right.
From what I see, I think you're actually enjoying at least some of that journey. But how much of it, at any point, was it, I'm going to prove somebody wrong, or was it always, this is what I need to do for me and my daughter, really?
Yeah, I never had it to where I wanted to prove anybody else wrong. It was more so of me, it was more so my daughter. I just felt like I had a struggle with not being where I wish I could have been while she was younger.
Yeah.
And then now that she's older, I'm able to do so many more things that I wasn't able to do when she was a kid. So my motivation was always her. Like, I want to be able to have the money and the time to support her the way I want to. So it was never that I wanted to prove anything to my father or my mom or anybody in my family or in the community. It was more so I wanted to, I guess, prove something to my daughter, that even though I've made some mistakes, I can really still be a good mom to you. Right. So that was my big motivation.
Yeah. Are you your why now?
I am. I feel like I am part of my why.
Good.
Because I look at myself as like younger Cleo, and I feel like I was hard on myself back then. Because since I had a daughter early, I felt like I needed to know it all. And I clearly didn't know a whole lot. I'm still learning, right. But I feel like I am my why, because I know I want to continue to be an example. Right. Not just to my daughter, but to my nieces and nephews. My older sister, she has 5 kids. And I know they look up to me, and, they'll ask me questions about money or ask me questions about this. And it does feel good that they see value in me to ask me questions, So I think it's more so of like the next generation. Myself is the why, but also being the person I feel like I need to be to support them.
Yeah. Well, Cleo, I appreciate you giving us a peek into your story, opening up. I do want to end it on the happiest note possible. So let's go back to how people can find you and what you're offering, kind of your cadence on content, and if somebody wants to book you. I mean, I know she's in demand. I do have insight on that, so I'm glad she made time for us today. But seriously, thank you for sharing your story. I think I know it will help somebody probably unlock some things that, I mean, you got to own what you feel about the situation, even though you were in control of it. Clearly, you still made not only the best of your situation, you created another situation for yourself in a lifestyle that you and your daughter and many onlookers can be proud of. But tell the people where they can find you and what they'll find when they land on your page or your content.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. I just want to say that.
Sure.
So I definitely needed this because I never talk about the fatherhood topic, my experience with my father. So this was amazing.
Exclusive.
Right. Exclusive. 100%. But they can find me at cleoyogafinance.com. I'm on Cleo Yoga Finance on all social media platforms. But my website is cleoyogafinance.com. And my podcast, Financially Free with Cleo, that is on my Cleo Yoga Finance YouTube page. And of course, it's on all the podcasting platforms. So I would just love for you guys to take a listen at the podcast. Let me know your thoughts about it. And of course, as far as content, I'm always talking about the mindset around money, have money yoga classes. So I do mix yoga and finance because I'm not just about the financial education. You have to tap into the mental and the physical part too, because if you're always in pain and you're always stressed and feeling overwhelmed, it's hard to really focus on getting your financial life together. So we have to incorporate the self-care and the money mindset. So just tap into me, Cleo Yoga Finance.
Absolutely. And when you get to her YouTube page, if you don't start dancing when the video comes on, something's wrong with you, right? All right. Guys, I got stuff on my website. The There's Some Podcast. You can buy stuff. You can click buttons to donate, help push this thing. As you'll notice, the production value is going up because this is going to be a worldwide platform to help men see themselves differently and other men differently, right? And we want to have these conversations and make sure that we are supportive to the women that birth us and the women that surround us with love every day. That's all I got. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.
The Dear Son Podcast is produced by D. John's Live Studios. All rights reserved. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time.